Happy Juneteenth, everybody, and Habarigani. I am Noble Soul Wisdom, and I'm here to talk about Juneteenth. So let's get into it.
The most insightful revolutionary you will find, standing tall, revealing truth to every mind.
I want to thank everyone for listening and watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, share the video with other people. Help me grow this channel so we can reach more of the Black community with deep science and knowledge. So now let's talk about Juneteenth. This is a very brief summary in case there's anyone who doesn't know. When the European white man first came to the U.S., this country was not developed at all. It was just basically land. And they said, okay, so we can turn this into a country and make this our own. But who's going to build the houses, the schools, all of the structures? They didn't want to do that. So they went to Africa and kidnapped millions of Black people and put them into slavery, bondage, and forced them to do free labor. And I said millions, yes. So let me give you a little perspective here about the numbers. A lot of Black people resisted, and they were killed on the motherland. They never made it to the ship. Others died in transit on the ship. Some by suicide, some by fighting, some by starvation and illness. A lot of different ways. But it has been reported by various historians that almost 100 million Africans were a part of the slave trade, but not all of them made it to the U.S. It is estimated that approximately 4 million African people made it to the country, and those people were in bondage. The first slaves arrived here in 1619, and slavery went on from 1619 until 1865. Legally, slavery ended in 1863, but it took more than 2 years for the last slaves to get the news, and those slaves were in Texas, and they did not learn the news until 1865. So think about that. From 1619 until 1865, we were slaves in bondage. That's over 250 years. That's a long time. During that period of time, the slave master, they stripped from us our culture, all of it, our names, our religions, everything about our culture, our languages, everything. And they forced us to adopt their names: Smith, Johnson, Williams, Thompson, etc. All of these English names that we carry today come from the slave masters. And people seem to forget that. So if your captor held you and stripped away your culture, and then one day you became free, it would seem to be, common sense would seem to say that you would be in a rush to reclaim your identity, your culture. Call us by our real names. But for some reason, most black people did not have that inclination. Instead, they take pride in these English names that came from the slave master. And today in 2026, most black people every single day complain about racism, complain about the white people and the system and the government and all of that. But we're in a rush, running to the grocery store to celebrate 4th of July, which is the birthday anniversary of the U.S. And when this country was founded, we were still in slavery and considered 3/5 human. So why are we helping them celebrate their birthday? That makes no sense. We were in bondage for a long time. Why would you take pride in these English names? That makes no sense. If you want to coexist with these people in this country, that's one thing. But you should at least reclaim your name and your language and the other parts of your culture. Why are we not doing that? That doesn't make any sense. How do you know someone still has a slave mentality? Well, there's different clues. One clue is you're running around trying to celebrate 4th of July. Yes, that's a big clue. Are you not aware of the situation? That's one clue. Another clue is taking pride in the slave master's names. That doesn't make sense. All of this defies logic. The way you think, the way you move, says a lot about your mentality and how you're thinking. You're running around trying to ingratiate yourself with the white people when they don't really care about black people as a whole. Yes, there are some black people who are millionaires. There are many black people who have jobs that pay 6 figures. But that's not the case for all black people in the U.S. Most black people are struggling to get by, living month to month. Now, I want you to think about this. We were here in the beginning when it was only the white people and us. And of course, you had the Aborigines, the Native Americans, but they weren't many and they didn't utilize much of this land. So outside of them, aside from them, there was only the white people and us for a very long time. It's only in recent decades that people have started immigrating to this country from other countries in droves. So now we have all this diversity. But when you look at the totem pole of wealth in this country, of course, the white people are at the top because they own 90% of the wealth in this country. So they're at the top, and there's no close second. And then somewhere approximately in the middle of the totem pole, you have all of the different ethnicities who immigrated to this country in the last few decades. And then, alone at the bottom, who is alone at the bottom? Black people. The people who were here in the beginning, the people who physically built this country. The white people built this country intellectually. But physically, the black people built this country. So you would think that on the totem pole of wealth, white people would be at the top. That would make sense. It would be nice if black people were tied for first place at the top. Excuse me. It would be nice if we were tied for first place, but we're not. But at least we should be a close second. But no, we're not. There's a big gap between the top and somewhere in the middle. And who's in the middle? All of these other immigrants. And then there's another gap. And then there's one entity at the bottom, and that's black people. How is that possible? Because of institutional racism. And I don't care if you run into some white folks that act nice to you and they say they're not racist and they tell you all this stuff. But I tell you one thing, they're not willing to share their privilege. They're not willing to share the wealth. So you hear a lot of people talk about the 1% owns most of the money in this country. They own this country. You think they're willing to share any of that wealth with black people? No. They could if they wanted to. There's no reason for any black people in this country to be poor, to be in poverty. This country has too much money. But the white people own 90% of the wealth, and they're not giving it up. So if this is the reality, why do you continue to ingratiate yourself with these people? If you want to coexist, that's fine. But abandon these English names. Stop running around trying to have straight, long hair, and stop dyeing your hair blonde and all this other foolishness. You're trying to embrace, to adopt, to appropriate their way of life, their culture, their appearances, the same people who basically abuse you for over 350, 400 years of abuse. Even after 1865, the abuse continued. Today it continues. But we continue to want to kiss these people's butts, and that makes no sense at all. You need to learn your own culture. Abandon all of these fantasies you have in your mind of wanting to emulate their culture. Stop running around wearing all of this makeup looking like a clown in a circus. You have your freedom now. You can reclaim your culture. You can reclaim your name and your language and everything. And that's what we need to be doing. Now, for those of you who don't know, back in the day, in the 60s, there were a lot of black revolutionaries, black nationalists that existed who were serious about pushing a line. And I'm not talking about the Black Panthers. There were people more serious than the Panthers, bigger than the Panthers that existed. And there was a governmental convention that occurred for 3 days in 1968. Or was it 1966? I might be off by a couple of years. But this convention was comprised of 500 black revolutionaries that came together to try to create some type of foundation for black people in the U.S. to try to reclaim our identity. So here we are today. We have red, black, and green, and people don't know from where it came and how it was adopted. And this was during that governmental convention that red, black, and green was adopted as the official colors for black people in the U.S. And Swahili was adopted as the national language for black people in the U.S. The colors came from Marcus Garvey, but they were adopted by this 500 revolutionaries that took part in this governmental convention for black people only. So, red, black, and green adopted as ours. Swahili as our language. And for those of you who don't know, let me tell you what the colors mean. Red represents the blood that has been and will be shed during the struggle. Black represents the people, us, and green represents the land that we want for independence. Because here we are all these years later and we still don't have any independence. We are seriously lost. And so, to circle back to Juneteenth. It just became a federal holiday 3-4 years ago when Biden made it official. But before that, we were celebrating Juneteenth on our own. We created that holiday. But for so many years, most black people did not acknowledge it. They didn't make a big deal about it. But as soon as the white people, the government, made it a federal holiday, all of a sudden more black people want to acknowledge it. And there was a lot of involvement and participation that first year. But then the participation fell off a little bit for the second year and then the third year. Why? Because even though the government made it an official holiday, they haven't been putting any resources or promotion behind it. They made it a holiday and they left it to us to do our thing. You figure it out. But you know what? We don't do that. If the white man doesn't do it for us, then we just let it fizzle out. This is a problem. Everywhere there is a Juneteenth celebration, there should be huge numbers of black people there. But we're not having that level of participation across the country, and we need to change that. We need to understand what this really represents, and we need to understand what really occurred from 1619 until 1865. Over 250 years of slavery and bondage. Adults who understand this knowledge need to be teaching their children. They need to teach their nieces and nephews and other young people. Each one teach one. Kila moja kufundisha moja. That is what we need to be doing. Let's pull together, Harambe. We need to start doing this. I hope everyone has learned a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of history from this video, enough to spark a serious interest to go do your own independent research and learn your history. Know your roots. If you don't know from where you came, then you're not going to be properly guided to where you need to be going. And that's important. So I want to thank you all for listening to this speech. Remember, subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Share the video. Let's grow this channel. And let's start learning some stuff, and let's reclaim our culture and identity. Let's pull together. Let's unify. Let's grow together. Let's enlighten one another. Each one teach one. Thank you. Asante Sana.